Welcome everyone to this masterclass when we discuss what is the future of traveling in a post-COVID-19 world. I'm Anita Menderotta. My name is, as the head of my business, Anita Menderotta Associates. Very importantly, I'm the special advisor to the Secretary General of the UNWTO, a great honor that I have. And I also work very closely with international organizations, governments around the world. Very, very importantly, however, as we say back home in South Africa, my blood is green. I spent 26 years in South Africa. I came many lifetimes ago. It is still my heart. It is still my home. I still have my property in Cape Town, though my business is London-based, but it's very much a part of who I am. I'm Canadian by birth, though, again, as I say, I was in South Africa for over 20-something years. I can hear the Canadian national anthem and I love it, I appreciate it, I stand tall, but every time I hear Nkosi Sikelel' Africa, I cry. It's a guaranteed response. And so today I join you as a fellow South African and someone who is absolutely celebrating the opening up of the borders on October 1st, as His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, announced last night. This is a very, very good thing for not just South Africa and tourism, but for tourism in Africa, as in many ways people look at South Africa as the open window to get a sense of, can we actually fulfill that dream? Can we go and fulfill that dream of going down, whether it's on safari, to the winelands, to see Robben Island, to climb Table Mountain, to see the jacarandas in Johannesburg, and to explore the continent itself. So I'm very proud to be with you as a fellow African. My first exposure to the continent back in 1991 when I actually arrived in Malawi, not South Africa. And so I think to date, I have been to 21 countries across the continent. And as I said earlier, my blood is green. So I'm very grateful to be back home. That said, I would like to extend a very, very warm thank you to Africa Travel Week, WTM Africa, and Reed Exhibitions for asking me to do the honors of being with you all today for this conversation. This masterclass is a conversation. It's our way to talk about an industry that we all love, that we have all been very much in mourning over its challenges in the last 8 months, and in hopeful celebration of all that is ahead. Because as comes with any single crisis around the world, we discover the value of something. And internationally, the value of travel and tourism has been exposed, and the values of travel and tourism. It's not just about the travelers, it's also about the supply chains. It's all of those industries that we support, which is 1 in 10 jobs around the world. Hence why we're struggling so much with the industry shutting down. So join me on this little journey. We have about a 45-50-minute conversation coming up ahead of us. And at any point, I ask you all, please, there's a chat at the bottom of your screen. Please do jump on, say hello, let us know where you're from. We have people from across the continent and across the world. We'd love to see your flags waving. If you have a question, I will keep an eye on the Q&A as well. So if you see my eyes drop, I'm not losing attention. I'm actually putting more attention onto the Q&A. And questions you have, please do let us know. Well, let me know, because we've got our Wizards of Oz backstage as well. And I'm going to be asking you questions because I want to hear from you. This is not all about me. This is all about you. So I'm going to pose questions during the session itself, and I'll keep checking in to see how people are answering. But for the moment, let's move to the presentation. And so I'm going to take you through the basis of our conversation today. And I welcome you for that whole conversation. But before we do, I'm seeing some content coming in. We have Botswana on board. We've got Cape Town. Who else do we have? Let us know. Let's see if we can cover the map. We've got Zambia that's checked in. This is fantastic. I must say I'm feeling very much happier being back on the continent. Looking forward to having you with us on the chat. And let's go to the presentation and hope the technology gods are working. So here we are. Let's take a look at understanding, ultimately, the post-COVID traveler. Now, as you can see, I've cut out the word post because we are in a COVID-19 world. We are going to have to adjust to a whole new way of living and of traveling. This is not just about the travel and tourism sector. This is about all of our lifestyles. So this is really important. As a result, we know that COVID-19, which is the acronym for coronavirus disease, 19 being the year in which it was discovered, we know that we're going to have a COVID-19 and a COVID-20, which will be something that might happen in 2020, something in 2021 will give us COVID-21, whatever it is, we live in a world now in which a pandemic can happen anywhere, and we need to take care of each other so we can take care of our industry. So what can we look forward to as we look ahead? Join me on this journey. As I've said, we've been living this year very much familiar with the concept of coronavirus, which is a virus that is in the flu family itself. So the annual flu that we always have when it gets chilly, if we look at SARS, MERS, they're all in the same family. COVID-19 is unusual. On the 17th of September, so today, we are 191 days in from when COVID-19 was officially declared a global pandemic. That is quite remarkable. It has been definitive. And what I find is fascinating is, do you remember where you were on New Year's Eve, 2019? And as the clock counted down to 2020, we thought, new year, new decade, 2020 vision. Little did we all know what we were actually going to be in for. And I'm quite confident that if I gave all of you a screenplay for a movie that outlined the year ahead with all of these challenges, a pandemic that goes from east to west in lockdown countries, it's invisible, it terrifies people, I'm quite sure you'd throw it back to me and say, no, it's science fiction, can't believe it. Can you believe what we are living through right now? And that's where it's the possible that's been so challenging to live with. Why? Because of the reality of COVID-19. What is so different about COVID-19 compared to any other crisis we've had in the world in the last decade? We've had terror attacks, we've had natural disasters, we've had economic collapses, we've had political disturbance. All of that has been visible. The COVID-19 challenge has been its invisibility, and as a result, it's primal. I right now am sitting in Georgia, in Eastern Europe. I'm in my hotel room, so welcome to Eastern Europe. And if it was a color, if COVID-19 was purple and I could see the splotches, I would know where to go and where to avoid. Because it's invisible, we have no idea. I don't know if it's in the room, I don't know if it's not. So that element makes it very, again, primal. We become fearful. And sadly, in the last 191 days, as time has passed, a lot have become quite comfortable with the situation, quite fearful, quite fearless. Some have become quite frustrated and flippant. But we need to recognize that COVID-19 is agnostic. It doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about religion. It doesn't care about age. It doesn't care about seasons, borders, passports, nothing. All it cares about is staying alive. And to do that, it needs to turn us into its little hosts. We need to stop that. But we need to do that recognizing this is not a travel and tourism crisis. This is not a healthcare crisis. I beg your pardon, sorry, I caught myself. This is a healthcare crisis. It's a humanitarian crisis, which has caused an economic crisis, which has been further magnified because of the travel and tourism crisis. But at the end of the day, this is about human lives and connected to human livelihoods. What I often find, though, is that when people say, we're going to go back to normal, we need to get back to normal, there is no going back and there is no normal. What we are experiencing now is, especially in travel and tourism, this is our 9/11 moment. We will never be able to sit in the cockpit and observe when the pilots are landing and seeing all the lights over Johannesburg, seeing the coastline in Durban, seeing Table Mountain lit up with the lights at night. We will never be able to do that again. We need to be really conscious of that, and there is no normal, because ultimately the pandemic has been democratic and striking everyone around the world, and it's changed how we view the world and how we view our own lives. To get a bit of a sense of where we're at, travel restrictions are currently in place in 100% of destinations. 40% are easing, and I'm very excited to say that we now have the African continent easing along. Kenya's already been easing, South Africa's easing from October the 1st. A lot of it is about confidence building. International arrivals are expected to be best case scenario, 58% down. Worst case scenario, 78% down. And this is coming straight from the UNWTO. I must add as well that My Secretary General, who was here hosting the Executive Council, is aware that I am doing this session, and he sends his warmest regards because he, along with other tourism around the world, want to make sure that tourism leaders stand together to unlock the potential of the tourism industry for all of us. Why? Because if you look at industry losses, 1 million jobs a day. Our industry is responsible for 1 in 10 jobs worldwide, which means 1 million jobs a day is impacting hundreds of millions of families around the world. This crisis is worse than everything we've lived in our generation combined. We're a world on watch for spikes, surges, second waves, and third waves. We've had Hong Kong declare a third wave as cases starting to increase again. We know that there's a vaccine that's going to be coming at the end of the year. We don't know exactly when that is. We need to make sure that we take care of it in a way that we can manage the distribution of the vaccine and everything that comes with it. I'll take you through the presentation now. I do see we have a little hand raised. I'll go to that into a second. But we say very much, we talk about the new normal. We talk about the new normal. It's not the new normal, it's the next normal. The next normal is like we've seen in countries where regulations change, codes change, and levels of concern change. We're now in level 1 in South Africa, for example. But that's the next normal. Once we have a vaccine, we'll have a next normal after that. Once the vaccine is then rolled out globally, we'll have a next normal and protocols will adjust. The normality is in phases, as we need to understand what on earth is going on with the virus itself and how does that impact our world. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of a mapping here, and we will, of course, make this presentation available. The recording will come out to you soon, but we'll also make the presentation itself available. So what exactly is happening in the world? We can see from this map itself that there's a high degree of ultimately restrictions that are being placed in different degrees. This is a significant issue for our industry. Reason being, because ultimately it means travelers don't know where can they go, where can't they go, when are things changing. My business is currently located in the UK. What's quite scary about that is the fact that we know very distinctly that someone can be traveling from the UK to Spain. Suddenly the restrictions are changed and quarantine requirements are put in place within 6 hours. And people from the UK traveling back home then need to go back home and stay in for 2 weeks. The quickness of borders opening and closing, quarantine requirements changing is what is making people very nervous. Because for travelers, they want to go and travel with peace of mind. But how do you do that when you're not sure if while you're away, the restrictions of the country you're visiting might be changed, or when you're going home? That's a big deterrent that we need to be conscious of our industry. But still, as I say, respectful for what's happening in governments trying to take care of their people. When we look at recovery itself, as I said, there's no going back to 2019. It's going to be about going to the next normal. This year, however, it's going to be very clear that it's not at all about a quick recovery. The UNWTO anticipates recovery around 2023, 2024 to the levels of momentum we had last year. We are 70% down in terms of current trending of momentum for this year. And the impact of the crisis is 8 times what we saw in the 2009 economic crisis. This is terrifying. And this is why all of us cannot strip away the value of the industry, not just as our profession and our vocation, but ultimately something that touches everyone in our lives. I'm very pleased to say that the UNWTO yesterday announced a magnificent tool, which I strongly recommend everyone does a Google check on. It's a UNWTO Tourism Recovery Tracker. This is currently done at a regional level, though there is also statistics in some cases at a country level. Why is this so important? It gives us a sense of where are people actually looking for the future of travel, whether it's seat capacity in terms of airlines, where are they looking for their reservations, hotel searches. This search information is absolutely vital because it shows us as the world gets a little bit more confident and a little more open to travel, where are they actually interested in traveling to. So please do, when you get a chance, you can do it now in parallel screen or after this session, take a little Google check on UNWTO Tourism Recovery Tracker. Alternatively, you can look at unwto.org, our main website, and that will give you a direct indication of everything you need to know from a UNWTO perspective on safe, cautious tourism restart, and the recovery tracker link is in there as well. So what else is happening? As I firmly believe, we don't have travel and tourism without aviation. Domestic travel is critical. We require trains, roads, buses, hotels, all of that to support us. But if we really want to get the magnification of the value and the impact of travel and tourism, it's aviation, domestic, regional, and international. IATA, which is the International Air Transport Association and the authority bringing together all the airlines, is seeing that they're not going to see momentum going up in aviation until 2024. Think about it. At the peak of at the peak of the pandemic, 16,000 aircraft around the world were grounded. Only a few were flying. Some were flying to repatriate people, so travelers, people who lived in another country but were visiting somewhere else, tourists, expats. They were stuck somewhere in the world and they needed to get back home. So repatriation flights were taking place. Tens of thousands of people around the world were stuck somewhere else. Flights were carrying on, but those were under very specific mandates in terms of why they were flying and how they were flying. On top of that, you had a lot of healthcare professionals being flown around the world to support countries as they were facing the up curve of the COVID-19 crisis itself, or medical supplies. But when we look at commercial aircraft and standard business and leisure travel, everything dropped off. Everything dropped off. 16,000 aircraft around the world were grounded. They're going to make decisions based on demand and revenues. So it's going to be a long time before the demand can be guaranteed to be stable and countries being confident in opening their borders and skies and keeping them open. IATA is always an exceptional way of looking at the future of aviation, which is the future of travel and tourism. Which regions do they anticipate opening up first? Asia Pacific and Europe. A couple of reasons. Asia Pacific, because it was at the front of the challenge of the crisis and it's been recovering sooner. Plus, there's a lot of domestic and regional travel. So the ASEAN region, to go from Thailand to Cambodia or from Singapore into Japan, it's all relatively regional. So there's a lot of aviation that hops around in that area. But then we look at what's going on for the long term, it's North America. We know of the enormous challenges that are being faced in North America with COVID-19 and enormous prayers that still need to be taking place. But ultimately, if we look at metrics of performance and hope, it's very much aviation. So as we open up the borders in Africa, we need to make sure that we open up the skies and the aviation routes come back into place. We see in terms of the initial nudges, as I said, there's been a little bit of international travel, but I've explained some of the reasons behind that, but it's the domestic travel that's keeping a lot of the momentum going. That's fantastic to see. I'm also very pleased to share that there were some statistics that came out from the IATA group itself and saying that as much as people felt that it was going to be more expensive to travel, the domestic flights are 30% lower in pricing to be able to get that momentum up, and unbelievably, yet credibly, 70% discounting on business and first class flights. Again, to get people traveling again and get the airlines back in the sky, which takes us back to why I share again what we anticipate as the scenarios. If we continue, and as we see September being right here, we can anticipate we're going to be having a very challenging year, and we need to make sure that as demand increases, these scenarios remain stable so we can make sure we don't have another dip down and we end up in not a V curve, but as they say, a W. Here's an indication from the trackers in terms of hotel searches, because this includes both domestic and international travel. What are the countries? And year to date, how are they performing? What's very clear is that they're performing at levels never seen before. This is unprecedented, and it's a word that's been exhausted, but it is. What's happening with COVID-19, both to us as human beings and to our industry, is for the history books. We are living a hypothesis, we are a case study, and we are going to be the ones who are going to have to define how do we get through this, because none of this was ever planned and would ever be believed again if you wrote it in anything but a science fiction tale. What I wanted to look at now is what we know. We know that the fallout of the pandemic is going to be very clear. We have a deep global recession for all the people that have lost their jobs, all of the global systems that have been put in place to keep jobs buoyant by having companies and small businesses especially have jobs protected by putting them on, for instance, furlough schemes. All of that's going to pull away because governments can't do that for the long term. So we need to be really careful of the recession and the impact that's going to have on lives and livelihoods. From a travel and tourism perspective, initially the feeling was people are going to go back on holiday. But interestingly, all of us are those people. We've all been grounded, and many people have been separated from loved ones around the world. We've missed milestones. We've missed moments that have been important, that have been positive, but also painfully hurtful. And we want to connect with loved ones again. So home and heart is going to be the motivator for people traveling as soon as they can, rather than actually going on a holiday. That's really important because, as we know, the psychological impact, the physiological impact in terms of the virus is as critical as the psychological impact. We have a healthcare crisis, both in body and in mind. And with the world separated and fearful of equally jobs, we need to keep an eye on making sure we can keep people connected virtually for the moment, physically for the long term, but in a way that's safe. The future of the pandemic, what's very concerning to me is that many people are getting, as I said, frustrated. And it's about getting over it. And ultimately, it's a feeling of, well, if I get the flu, I get the flu and I continue. It's not the same with COVID-19. We know that we have what we call a long tail. So I might get COVID-19 now and get over it. 2 weeks later, I'm fine, I'm back out again. But COVID-19 is unique. It has incredible lingering effect, both in terms of respiratory systems, but also neurological. We're still figuring that out. We're developing a virus at a time when we're still studying the life cycle of the actual virus itself. So when we get the vaccine being developed to counter the virus, it's based on a level of understanding. There's so much we still don't understand. And that's why the long tail, as we call it, is very critical. Equally, if we say that 85% of the people that get COVID-19 are asymptomatic, they don't show any symptoms, I might be asymptomatic, thinking it's fine, I got through COVID-19, it wasn't a problem. And then flu season hits. And suddenly, I'm not getting the flu, I'm getting pneumonia very quickly. Then it's realizing that, oh, maybe I did have COVID-19 and it's affected my respiratory system. That's what's been really interesting about COVID-19 is that when it hits other ailments, those that are already vulnerable because of their situations, or those that get the flu later, then you suddenly see the impact. As I said earlier, we need to make sure we get that vaccine developed and rolled out. It needs to be approved, trusted, and out to the world equally for everyone around the world. A folly that we need to recognize for our industry, we need to be aware of overpricing. Everyone has suffered financially this year. There is no one in the industry that has done well, but that doesn't mean that we actually increase pricing and it pushes people away rather than attracts them in. Overpromising, I want to tap on this because again, for the first time in exactly 6 months, I'm traveling internationally again. And it was a very different experience because in addition to being a business person and a representative from the UNWTO and someone who loves and represents their clients, I was also a traveler. And it really was a brave new world, but I'll show you a bit about that in a moment. We also need to make sure that the protocols in place are not just in place with governments and industry, but that travelers, citizens respect them, not disrupting them, not disagreeing with them and disregarding them. If we have a rule that everyone on an aircraft needs to wear their masks, I need to wear my mask. I need to respect that because me getting frustrated with it doesn't help my health and it certainly doesn't help anyone else on the aircraft itself. These are some photographs of just a few days ago when I left London to come here to Georgia. Normally it would have been a direct flight from Heathrow into Tbilisi, but because of the fact that, as I said, all those airlines have stopped flying, there have been restrictions on travel movement, which means it's only occasional flights, very few a day. We're lucky if it's every other day. So I went off to Heathrow very early in the mornings. I had to go from Heathrow to Amsterdam, Amsterdam Schiphol to Tbilisi. And this is what I found before I even got into the airport, passengers only. No families and friends should enter the terminal. All of us know that airlines and airport terminals are centers of emotion. People hugging because they're finally getting people back home again that they've missed. People crying because they're letting people go off on a holiday or on a business trip and they're going to miss them. All of that is gone now. Only passengers can enter the airport building, which means all of that emotional sharing and exposure has been cut off. It has literally been masked. In addition, think about airlines and airports and all of that money that they used to actually have going through the airports because of food and beverage and retail. All of those jobs, all of that's cut off. That's really, really important. We need to keep a close eye on that because that's just one of the protocols. The airports are doing it for our own good, but sadly, the physical good makes the emotional side really suffer as well. What I also found is coming into the hotel, in the elevator, for instance, all the signage. Normally in the elevator, you'll see that there'll be a signage about the restaurants, welcoming you to the hotel, showing you all the recreation, showing you the city. Now it's about the protocols. And the protocols are saying no more than 3 people in the elevator, and you have to keep 2 meters apart. But what do you do if you're in an elevator like I was, and the actual size of the elevator isn't even 2 meters? How do you manage that? So people are doing their best to deliver an experience, but in a situation where we have to inject the protocols, but the protocols have a significant impact on the experience. Coming into my hotel room, it was all about the plastic bags. I've just lost the word. The TV converters that's used, it's covered in a plastic bag. It's sitting here beside me. I use it every time I turn on the television and put it on to CNN. But how do I know the bag is clean? And alongside, the hotel had a little bag for me with my masks, my hand sanitizer, and gloves if I wanted them. These are all now part of the amenities kits that are in the hotels. And yet many hotels, like this one, are having to take the other stuff out. Some of the decor items that if they keep it in have to be sprayed down every single day. So it's a really interesting balancing of what do you give to travelers and what stays away. And this is a little moment that I was always worried about. Admittedly, my beverage of choice is bubbles, whether they are Cape Classique from South Africa, or it's champagne from France, or it's cava from Spain. So I went for dinner the other evening in the hotel to, quite honestly, put some money into the hotel and in their food and beverage. And it was very interesting getting poured a glass of champagne with a mask. This mask, interestingly, has slipped under my lovely attendant's nose, which it should have been covering. So at least I had a hint of a smile. We can't see smiles anymore. We are an industry about emotional experiences. How do you manage that when you can't see people smile anymore? This is one of the greatest challenges of our industry going forward. And we need to be able to, for lack of better words, read each other's eyes, because that's going to be one of the only ways we can communicate the love, the care, and the responsibility that is travel, tourism, and hospitality. And this is why I say this. There is no best practice. We are living through the case study, as I said, and everyone is trying to manage lives and livelihoods, physical health, mental health, and the desire for people to just get out. We are not a generation that's used to being locked up. We are not a generation that is used to being scared of something invisible. And I like to equate it of the analogy of when a wild animal is caught. We've all seen this. They're put into a cage and they go in the cage and they run around and around and around and around. And eventually, after time, they slow down and they sit in the cage and they get used to the cage. And then they'll go sit in the back of the cage and they'll just get comfortable with it. This is it. This is what I'm used to now. Someone then comes and opens up the cage. 9 times out of 10, the animal doesn't run out of the cage. The animal actually pulls back and stays in the corner and has to be lifted out of the cage to be released. We are in that same mindset. In opening up the world, people aren't just running out. They're cautious. They're extremely cautious because we don't know what we're facing. We might be aching to get out, but that doesn't mean we are confident that we're going to be safe getting out. And this is why, as much as there's not best practice, there is best of intentions. And I wanted to share something which I thought was brilliant. This was created by the UK government for all of the month of August. It was called Eat Out to Help Out. The idea being that the government, which not only reduced VAT on the hospitality industry from 20% to 5%, they put this program in place where anyone going out for dinner, so you and your friends, you and your family decide to meet for dinner. You haven't been in a restaurant in a long time. On July the 4th, all restaurants and hotels in the UK were opened up, but people still weren't going out. So the government came up with an idea that was brilliant. They said, if you go out for dinner from Monday to Wednesday, every single person dining will get up to £10 off of their meal, excluding alcohol, for that meal. It can be breakfast, it can be lunch, it can be dinner, for the entire month. Why did they do that? It wasn't just about increasing the supply chain activity and getting the restaurants open and getting all of the supporting supply chains, agriculture, hardware, retail, everything around it supported and remobilized. It was about getting people comfortable going out and eating out again, feeling safe to be able to go out, even if they had all the tables outside the restaurant, because thankfully in the Northern Hemisphere it was summer. Absolutely brilliant, because it was about getting the confidence of people dining out again, not just getting them spending money outside again. Very, very powerful. 63 million meals were sold in August in the UK. 63 million meals. It was such a success. The government that couldn't carry it on had to stop it. But the restaurant industry, they've continued it on. They've decided that they're actually going to be able to continue it because it's worth it to keep their people working, to keep the industry mobilized, and to get people familiar again. So what we need to do is make sure that we're always in a situation of looking at not just how do we unlock the industry, how do we unlock the industry's power to unlock other industries, which means no one can do it alone. No government can work without the industry. No industry can work without the travelers. No traveler can work as a traveler without recognizing their role as a citizen. It's fascinating. So where are we now? We're going to go into the final stretch of this presentation. What do we know for certain? And what do we as the industry know that we can count on in terms of looking at it from the point of view of how do we grow forward? What can we take from it? And I thought, okay, what do we tap into what people need most? If I can give you an acronym, what do we tap into as a form of insight into what travelers need most? What do they need? They need space. Travelers need space. And what does that equate to? Firstly, it's space in terms of who they are and how they're experiencing the new world around them. As I said up front, we as a travel industry need to recognize the value of travel has changed, as has the values of traveling. People need safe distances, they need freedom to move, and they need stretch of body, mind, and heart. People have been contained in. As much as we've been living through our screens, as much as we can surf the internet, as much as we can travel digitally, it has only fed our desire to get out. People need space, but they need to have the comfort of space apart from one another. That's one of the reasons why nature-based tourism is growing. It's not just because people have more value for nature and the environment. They know that if they're outdoors and if they're moving around, there's less of a chance of someone actually being in a situation where they're feeling very much at risk, so someone is just too close. So the opportunity, unknown and unlocked destinations across the country. We always talk about the importance of dispersion in our destinations. Every government, every destination has 5 primary metrics: arrivals, spend, distribution, which is the dispersion of people around the country itself, repeat visitation, and making sure that travelers are coming in a way that beats seasonality. We need to get people year round. Domestic travel has now become a priority of governments around the world. It's been the first time that domestic tourism has become the only way of people traveling and really valued. What is it doing? It's getting that dispersion. It's pushing the 365 travel, and it's creating an appreciation and an opportunity for new products. It's very much about now recognizing the seasons that we can leverage. Every single country has 4 seasons. How do we increase the appeal of a destination? When I was living in Cape Town, we used to always talk about winter in the Cape. Now, I'm a Canadian. So winter means snowdrifts. It means a very different thing. And all I used to think is that winter just means that you go to the winelands and you put on a fireplace and you open up a bottle of red instead of summer where you're sitting outside and drinking chilled whites. There are ways to leverage the change of the season. What does that mean? Minimum 4 opportunities for people to come back and travel. That's really important. As I said, it's the advancement of the nature-based segment because people want to get out and spend more time outside, but also simplifying the hardware. If people want to get out and breathe in the world, we can take some of the hardware and the infrastructure away to allow them that space, but also reduce some of our costs. Preparedness. In space, that's what the P is about. We need to make sure that protocols are understood and in place, policies are understood, experience delivery is understood, being very clear of what is available and what isn't, and being sensitive to not only the visitors, but also the visited. When I have my hotel room being cleaned by the lovely gal who comes in every day and she cleans up my room, she, needless to say, is nervous about me. She doesn't know if I'm safe. She doesn't know if I've tested positive. I need to take care of her as much as I'm counting on her taking care of me. And that goes far beyond the jobs that we perform. That's just the humanity of COVID-19. And that's why we're in such an interesting time. The opportunity, therefore, is making sure that we talk to travelers before, during, and after the travel itself. Start engaging with them. Build up the anticipation, build up the excitement, but also build up the understanding of what they're going to be looking forward to, because looking back at what it used to be doesn't matter anymore. And focus on the software. Focus on demonstrating that you do indeed care. So on that note, I'm going to pause for a second and see, for a second, and try to get into my Q&A and quick. So I have a question from Innocent. Thank you very much, Innocent. I love your name. Will the economic crisis have an impact on travel to long-haul destinations? Without question. It's a really important question, and that's about, as I said, aviation, very much a part of it. On the aviation side, it's not just about the air routes, it's also about people feeling comfortable in the aircraft, and ironically, air passage movement, air flows in an aircraft are vertical, they're not horizontal. So it comes from the top, it gets sucked in down the bottom. It's actually cleaner, and the rotation cycle of airflows in an aircraft are swifter than they would be anywhere else, in a hotel, in a home, wherever it might be. So it's actually as clean and under the same system as surgical wards and hospital emergency rooms. Same procedures of how they clean the air. But people still feel very worried being in a long haul destination travel process. So it will impact, no question about it. But it's just part of people getting adjusted again. Innocent also asked, what does the future of long-haul travel destinations look like for Zambia? I'm thinking hopeful. And one of the reasons why I say that is that this crisis has revealed that the African continent needs to connect with the African continent. And we have amazing honorable ministers of tourism and CEOs of NTOs that know that if they really want to untap the opportunity of travel and the recovery potential of travel in Africa, it's within Africa, not just relying on long-haul travelers itself. And we have Jenna asking, personally as a traveler, do you feel comfortable with the protocols in place in the airport and hotels? Do you feel there is more the industry can do or better do to provide travelers with peace of mind? Jenna, I love that you've asked this question because, as I said, the industry, governments, businesses, infrastructure is doing the best it can at significant cost to put protocols in place, but it is the traveler's responsibility to respect and activate those protocols. Really, really important. So yes, there's more that they can do by getting travelers to recognize that they are as much a part of the solution as we are about managing the problem. It's a tricky one because it's a challenge in terms of how do we get people to just be responsible. We tap into their humanity. Travelers are not them. Travelers and governments are not them, industry's not them. They are us. We are travelers as much as we are professionals in the industry. So please do put your questions through and I will keep checking on the Q&A board. But for now, we continue to A in space. It's all about appreciation. We need to make sure that there is appreciation of not just the travelers, but our own ability to get back out again. Everyone who is wanting to travel, is being given the opportunity to do so in different ways at levels of risk being taken from them, but put back into the world. And this is really important. That I always say when people ask about all the travel I used to do, which could have been up to 220 days a year, and suddenly I'm grounded for 200 days, and I don't think I've made my bed consistently or consecutively since I was in university, as long as it has been this year. So I'm grateful to go back out and travel again. Is the travel experience different? Yes, I shared with you some photographs, but that doesn't mean I should get cross about it. I need to be honest about it and respectful of it, and not lose the appreciation of the fact that I can get back out again. So this is really important. What we also need to do from an opportunity perspective is be human. This time is a unique time for every single person to connect personally, emphasizing the because you deserve it. You have the opportunity to go back out in the world again. I'm welcoming you all into this presentation, into my hotel room in Georgia. I didn't use a Zoom screen for a reason. I chose to keep it open because of this. Through all of the virtual connection that we've had to do for the last 6 months, we've allowed people to come into our lives. To close them off is to close off an opportunity for intimacy and human connection that has been quite unique, and that has been a blessing of COVID-19. We need to keep that connection alive, showing appreciation for not just the value of travel and the travelers quantitatively, but qualitatively. They are the heartbeat of keeping economies alive in so many countries in Africa and around the world. We as the industry must never stop saying thank you. Importantly as well, a lot of travelers going back out again, they have endured a long time of being grounded. They need to know that they deserve it. They deserve to be able to go back out again and celebrate the world that we live in and celebrate the ability to connect with people. It's reminding people that as much as we're nervous about the future and there are job concerns, you still deserve the chance to go out and explore the future and be a part of the future rather than being stuck in the present and hopeful that the past might come back again. The C, communicate. Communicate, 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 communicate. One of the reasons we were so nervous at the beginning of COVID-19 was because we had no idea what was going on. This invisible thing was moving from the east-west at unprecedented speed. Flights were being grounded, borders were shutting. We had no idea what we were dealing with. Initially, it was only people who showed symptoms. Then we discovered it was asymptomatic as well. We figured out that it traveled. First, it was only for people that were elderly. Now we know that even children and babies can get it. We're figuring this out. People get panicked when they don't know. What we need to do is make sure we are constantly engaging and sharing communication, even if it means we don't know this yet, but we are trying to figure it out. It's about communication of destinations to audiences as well, not campaigns. You still need to talk about all the reasons why we need to go to Botswana, Namibia, Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Liberia, wherever it might be, but in a way of saying it's because we want you there. We've missed you and we're all waiting to travel again. Not about showing off the destination as the hero. In a year like this, travelers are the hero. Ultimately, the destination is the stage, and we need to make sure we tap into why people are traveling, not where they are traveling, and then keeping that invitation and that hope alive so that when they're ready, when borders are open, when flights are going, they're going to be able to come across and join us in the next normal, and then the next, and then the next. And finally, when it comes to E of space, it's about managing expectations. This industry has been shaken to the ground. Our world has been shaken to the ground. We're now having to live with all these protocols being put in place. As a result, the delivery experience changes. A hotel I might have known and loved in the past will have to adjust in the future. I need to understand what that means. What does it mean in terms of the promise that's being made and the delivery itself? As I showed you with that lovely young gal serving the glass of champagne, she's still smiling, but the fact is, I can't see it. I can see it in her eyes, but I can't see her smiling the way we used to. People getting used to what they can expect versus not is important. Our pools open, our spas open, our kids centers open, our business lounges open. All of these things are really important. Otherwise, we're setting travelers up for profound disappointment. Because in the end, especially now, the emotional investment of travel far outweighs the financial. Because to travel again, in many ways, means for people to be able to live again and take the restrictions of their freedom off, physical freedoms as well as psychological freedoms. The opportunity is recognizing that travelers past are not those of the future. I don't mean this in terms of segments. It's not just about eco-tourists in the past, wellness tourists, adventure tourists. I'm not talking about the niche we put them into. I'm talking about their mindsets. They're thinking differently. By being grounded for all that time, we've all taken on a new appreciation for travel, for our ability to get in a car, get on a plane, get in a bus and travel and see somewhere new, discover somewhere new. It's the values of travel that have changed along with the value, not just about moving from one segment to another. We need to be really careful about that and acutely respect the intensity of the dream, the desire to finally go and experience that travel moment they've waited for 6 months, and how delivery capability might be impacted. It's very, very important that we be honest about what we can and what we can't do because of taking care of people and not just people feeling limited. So what do people want in the future of travel? They want space. They want to be able to have the space to stretch their minds and their hearts. They want to have the information and the preparedness to know, what am I facing in terms of protocols? What are the policies for crossing borders? How am I going to be safe if something goes wrong? What can I still do to get the pleasure? I need to be prepared for the new world of travel that I'm facing. So as a destination, as a business, you need to please let me know, what am I in for? And what should I still be excited about? That awareness is critical, and that links to the appreciation. All of us have so much to be grateful for, and it's never forgetting that we have to be grateful as travelers and the people travel to. It is an ecosystem that is invaluable. It is the heart of not just sustainability. When we talk about it originally in the context of green, sustainability is no longer the same definition. It's environmental sustainability, absolutely, but it's economic sustainability, cultural sustainability, social sustainability, and also spiritual sustainability. The definition of sustainability has expanded enormously. That's really important to recognize going forward. So I've got for you a little video to give you a break from my voice of a destination that is doing a great job at being clear on what are the expectations of the travel ahead. Enjoy. think that is absolutely beautiful because it makes it very clear that anyone wanting to travel to Egypt, I know as a traveler, you will take care of me. You will make sure the protocols are in place. You will make sure that I am safe, but at the same time, you will make sure that I have a magnificent experience of Egypt itself. I think that was really masterfully done. And it actually links to a question that's come through from Glenn. He says, do you have a website to access where protocols and practices are in place? Example, your example of Heathrow Airport. It could be useful resource to help our travelers set expectations. Really, really good question, Glenn. And interestingly enough, all airlines, major hotels, they have it on their websites. So if you go, for instance, to Heathrow Airport's main website, all airports have it flagged on their homepages. Any smart business has it on their homepages because it communicates not just the protocols that are in place, but it demonstrates that taking care of travelers is their priority. And central to taking care of travelers is making sure travelers have peace of mind of knowing what they need to know. So if they need to know something quickly, put it right on the homepage. So the answer to the question is very much, is there a standard set of protocols? No, and I'll explain why in a second. But if you're going to a country, go to the destination's website, the official government website. If you're going to a hotel, go to the hotel website. If it's not there on the homepage, put it in the search. But any smart business, any smart country, any smart anything will put it on the homepage to make sure that people know exactly what they need to know. I said that there is not a consistent amount of protocols. Reason why. We've heard a lot about the World Health Organization, the WHO. We've heard a lot about the CDC in the US, Johns Hopkins, all of them managing the virus count, tracking of it, following up on vaccines. I often get asked, why can't there be one simple protocol for everything for healthcare? Why can't those be put in every single country? Reason being this, WHO, for instance, does not have a mandate that can enforce governments to accept and put in place the protocols. What they can do is apply their best recommendations and hope and pray that governments will put those in place across the country, across the state, across the province, whatever it might be. That's really important. So the recommendations are there, but it is up to the entity, the hotel, the government, the cruise company, whatever it might be, to adopt that. That's very, very important. But that's where I say, if you want to see exactly what the protocols are for where you're going, take a look at the main websites. And if it's not there, send a question through on their contact us, and they should be able to give it to you very quickly. But that's where the caring comes through. Let people know what they need to know so they can relax and actually enjoy it. But Glenn, thank you very much for the question. So doing a quick check, we've got an anonymous attendee. Do you think corporate incentive travel will return in 2021? Or would you tend to recommend corporates look towards 2022, 2023? Yes, to both sides of that question, to anonymous. Reason being, there are going to be stages of the next normal. We know that we're attending WTM Africa virtually this year. Next year, it's going to be live, and that's the anticipation for next year. There are several reasons why corporate incentive travel might also change compared to conferences and business meetings. Companies around the world have struggled profoundly in terms of job losses, revenue losses. Many businesses have shut down. To actually then go and put money towards incentivizing someone to go off and have a holiday can A, put pressure on liquidity and on cash flow, but B, the optics, the actual sense of, should you be sending people off on holiday when you let people out of their jobs only a few months earlier? So even with major events, we're finding people need to be very conscious of not just how they are now reapplying their money, but what does that say about them as a brand? What does it say about them as a people? How does that reflect at a time when we know it's going to be 1,000 days before the whole world heals, emotionally, financially, in so many ways? So that's really important. Giselle is asking, in your opinion, what is the most important message South Africa needs to communicate in the coming months, from the brand perspective and also from tourism providers? It's a great question, and I'm really great, Gisela, that you've asked. I think importantly, and as I've said, the demand is going to be what's going to bring the carriers back, the airlines back. The message that needs to come out is very clearly, we've missed you. that South Africa is a place that has missed enormously the people of the world coming to visit, either for the first time, or it could be visiting friends and relatives in diaspora that are repeat visitors. But let the world know how much you've missed them. Keep talking to domestic tourists, because ultimately they are your greatest travelers, because they're the greatest ambassadors. This is their country. And interestingly, talking to domestic travelers through the world is a really good way of making the world very jealous and saying, wait a minute, that's an amazing destination. I want to be able to go there and see what people who live there so love about their own country. Very important. By implication, gentle exposure of the protocols to give that peace of mind, and keep talking. Just because people can't travel doesn't mean they've stopped dreaming of traveling. It's very, very important. Equally, the whole industry needs to come together, as we did, for instance, in the past in the Western Cape with the water crisis and now the water recovery. This is a time for the industry to work together, and to work together with the government, and to work together with citizens. Because with a situation like COVID-19, we either all win or we all lose. We can't compete. We can't compete and say our country is safer than another. That's just wrong. That's just morally wrong. Safety should be a given. So we need to make sure that as an industry, we keep talking to the world and let them know that all of that anticipation and dreaming will be worth it, because we want you back. We're readying for when you can be back, and we're grateful that you want to come and visit us. So as we wind into the last session itself, the last section itself, I share with you a message from my dear Secretary General. Whoops, sorry, I went too quickly. Secretary General, who ultimately says what is now a truth of tourism. It's no longer about the trends of travel and tourism. Goodness me, if we looked at the trends of 2020, we would have a very, very upset point of view about the future. But look at the truths. How has travel value changed? How has travel values changed? How has the ability to work together changed? And how do we move forward? And as he says, trust is the new currency. Ultimately, it's not about the protocols protecting people. It's not about hand sanitizers and masks. It's about people respecting the protocols to protect other people. If people trust in governments and in the tourism sector to keep them safe from harm, they will indeed travel tomorrow. As the ultimate person-to-person sector, and one that promotes solidarity and friendship, tourism will play a key role in spreading trust more widely, with benefits traveling far beyond tourism itself. Only this way can we drive our economies towards growth and restart building our societies. That is the bottom line. We are an industry that has always cared about one another. We've created a world of travel and tourism that shows our care, that's focused so much on the magic of the experience, the beauty of the experience, the uniqueness and authenticity. Now we need to recognize the value of the software. And such an important part of the experience is getting people absolutely confident in knowing. My invitation to you to come to my home and keep you safe is not about you arriving at the door and seeing hand sanitizers and signs for 2-meter distancing. It's you trusting in me to take care of you by putting all these measures in place. So with that, I again say an enormous thank you to Africa Travel Week, WTM, all of us involved today and being part of this session. I've thoroughly enjoyed spending the time with you. I'm very grateful we have no more open questions. I would love to understand, though, because you've got 2 minutes left. In the last 2 minutes, can people jump on the chats really, really quickly and say, if I could give you an airline ticket anywhere in the world, where would you go? 30 seconds, quick chat, where would you go? Japan, Peru. And thank you for the compliments coming through. Fiji, interesting. Where else would we go? Maldives, we've got Egypt. Where else would we go? Bora Bora, cruising, Germany, Morocco, Israel. This is quite fun. Spain to start. The Camino, very, very nice. Madagascar, where else are we going? France, Safari, Mexico. Anyone else? Last word, who gets the last word? Shirley, ladies, last word, excellent. Antarctica, Namibia, brilliant. Argentina, South Africa, fabulous. The quickness of response and the wideness of response, we are them. We are the world of travelers wanting to go to Poland. We are them. Please never forget that, because that is going to be the biggest hook for making sure that we bring travelers to our destination. We are travelers. Everything we have missed, they have missed. Everything we are afraid of, they are afraid of. Make that connection, make it work, and we will make our travel sector healthier, stronger, more sustainable, and once again, the greatest economic, social, environmental, cultural, and spiritual sector of the entire world. And with that, I say thank you very much in all the languages that exist across the entire continent. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay strong, keep healthy, keep hopeful, and keep your hands clean. And we'll see you again.